Hello, hello. I'm audible. I'm audible. Hey, Yashwant. Actually, I was not live. I was doing some settings. So at that time, I kept myself mute. But I hope I am audible now. Um, Thanks for the confirmation. Great. I see we have two people join. I think it's already time, so I'll just start. Rest can join later if there are any. Cool. First of all, we'll revise what we learned in the last session. So, hi Deepak. Uh, So what we learned last session was props. Okay, understood what props were. So to pass the state information down the components, the children tree, you can use the props. Then how to validate them. So using there is another npm package prop types. So you can make use of that, and you can then define how you want the props to be. Like it should be a string, whether it's required or not, meaning mandatory or not, and you can even give custom prop types. That is also possible. Going to next, conditional rendering. We saw different ways to conditionally render our UI based on certain conditions. So we used the double and meaning the AND operator, logical AND operator, also known as short circuit operator. We saw the ternary operator. Then we saw if conditions. We can also use switch case. So anything is fine. Here I have given an example where I'm using two of them. One is the conditional operator, not the conditional, so this is a short circuit operator, and then this is the ternary conditional operator. So yeah, this is how you do conditional rendering. um, mm, Hey Pratmesh, thanks for joining. So displaying the list of data. So mostly from an array, if you want to display the list of data, you will have to use the key prop, because the key prop actually helps your React algorithm to know whether this particular element was same or different from the previous render. So that's why it's very important to add key prop if you are displaying a list of data, or let's say common sort of components. Then, and also, though the key has to be a unique ID, do not use index of your array. I showed you what problem it could have. So like if index of like previous, let's say third item is deleted, then all the items after that, their index will change, hence their key prop will change, hence they will be re-rendered unnecessarily. So don't use index, use unique IDs. Cool. Then we learned about controlled inputs. So this basically there are two sort of inputs. One is control, one is uncontrolled. Uncontrolled meaning you are not having your state assigned to the value, and you are not controlling what the user is uh, giving as input. And another is a control input, in which you are passing your state as the value, and on the on change you handle that change by updating your state. Okay, and in that, while updating that state, you can do any manipulation you want. So in this case I did to uppercase. So if you go here, this is the example. If you just type in small case, also it is being typed in uppercase. Okay, then we learned about lifting the state up. So basically whenever we start coding, your state should be as close to a component, but as and when requirements change and you have to share your state, then you should lift or initially lift the state up if the scenario is like you are having the components as your siblings. So that's what we learned about with this example. Then we learned that let's say the requirement gets so complicated that lifting the state up won't solve that issue, and you are having facing the issue of prop drilling. So in that case, there are two ways to solve that. Okay, one is composition, one is context. So composition, basically you have to restructure your components. Okay, you have to use the children prop. Okay, so basically you should accept the children prop in your component and then pass it down. So if you see, yeah, this is how it will look. So you have your welcome, basically the component. Within that you have another component. Within that, the component which will actually use the prop. So this is one way to solve the prop drilling problem. So here there is no prop drilling, directly the component which is wanting to use props is using it. Okay, cool. um, then we learned about context API. That there are three things to need to be done in context API. First of all, create a context that you can do using React.createContext. You can pass null over here, you can, or you can pass initial state, and is fine. Then we create a context provider component. This context provider is the component which will wrap all the components which require that state information. Okay, so you have to create that. So as I told you, it will wrap the components which require the state, meaning it will take them as a children. So it will take those children and pass it down in between the actual provider. This provider is coming from your context. So whatever context you created over here, user context, whatever object was there, in that object you will have this provider component. So user context.provider, that will wrap this children, and in the value you send the state information or the state updation methods that you want to pass in an object. Okay, so this is your object. Cool. And the last part is to create a custom hook. Okay, now you could even not create this custom hook and directly use React.useContext, but I explained to you that there are some errors which are not clearly understandable when we face those errors. Like, meaning if you try to use React.useContext into some components which are not wrapped by your provider, then you get an error which you can't identify what's actually happening. Okay, so because of that you should use a custom hook. Okay, in the custom hook you can check whether if context is not available, meaning that means your custom hook that you have used is being used outside a component of the user provider. Okay, so that's there, and yeah, this is how it will work. So your provider is there, you should wrap the components which require the state inside that, and this is how it will work. Okay, and yeah, within the component which is wanting to use that state, just will call the custom hook, get the state, use the state. Then we came to the use reducer hook. In the use reducer hook basically is required when you are dealing with complex states, and that's the usual case when you're dealing with any enterprise application. Your objects that you receive are very complex objects, so you should use reducer in that case. First of all, we saw the non-traditional way of using it. Okay, so basically your use reducer hook accepts two things. One is your reducer function, second is your initial state, and what it returns is an array of current state and a state updater. Similarly, like even use state returns the same thing. Okay, so we first saw the non-conventional way of using it, and you can go to the example if you want again, and here this is just an example of that. Okay, so cool. Then we saw the actual way, so conventional way of using it, using the dispatch method. Okay, so here again same thing, except a reducer function, but this is more sophisticated one, where the state is initialized with your initial state, and then there is action. Action at the runtime will be whatever you pass to the dispatch method. Okay, in this dispatch method I am passing this object. So the convention is that you should have an object which has a type to identify what sort of updation is going to happen, and then comes a payload. So payload is this is optional, meaning if you want to pass any information that needs to update the state, then you should pass payload. Okay, cool. So that was about use reducer. Now today we'll start with useRef. Awesome. So yeah, let's start with that. So why to use useRef? What is the purpose of it? Okay, so the purpose of it is to access DOM elements via the ref prop. Now let's understand that. So whenever we are coding any component, okay, so let me just create that use so basically if I am trying to let me just change this h1 and let me just increase the fonts that you can see. Okay, I hope you are able to see, and I'll just undo send mode. Great. Cool. So let's say this is our component. Okay, this very simple component, nothing else, but I want access to this. But as we know, whatever you write here is JSX. Then that JSX gets converted into React.createElement calls, function calls. Who creates that? Who does that change? Transforming JSX into React.createElement. Anyone remembers? Babel, the transpiler does that. Okay, yes, correct, Nishan. Babel does it, and once that translation is done, you get your virtual DOM, and eventually after the reconciliation part, the actual DOM is updated. So when you're writing this code, you don't have access to the actual DOM node. Okay, but still if you want access to DOM node to do any sort of manipulation in your DOM node, how can you do that? So React provides us a ref prop, okay, in your JSX, each JSX element, and you can initialize this to a useRef object. Okay, so let me do that. Okay, first, okay, fine, then I think this would be, yeah. So first of all, creating a useRef. So React.useRef and input ref. Here you can initialize in case you want to, but not necessary. And here I will pass it off. So input ref. Okay, now the initialization is done. Now we will see once the component is mounted, we will see what does that contain. What does the input ref contain? Console.log. So basically input ref is a mutable object. Okay, and I'll just say current node. Okay, so when does this function get executed? This function will be executed once the component is mounted. And how many times will it be called? Only once, because I'm passing the dependency arrays, nothing, like it's an empty array. Okay, so yeah, so this is a mutable object. Okay, and it will have a current property inside that, which will actually contain the value. Okay, so here is pointing to this h1 DOM node. Okay, so let's see how it works. First of all, I have to go to app and I have to import it. So this is the component. Let's go. Let's check. Here, this is it. We are getting the DOM node. Okay, this is the actual DOM node. Usually you won't have access to it by the JSX, but because of that ref attribute, because of this ref attribute, we will have access to it. Okay, but only after that is mounted, because till then we don't have DOM is not constructed, right? So after that only we will have access to it. Now you can use it like if you want to access some value or stuff. So here comes the uncontrolled input parts. Okay, so I'll show you. Input type equals to text. Okay. Okay, yeah, one more thing. So your JSX should have always have one parent. Okay, here what I'm doing is I'm trying to pass two siblings. Okay, returning two siblings, but it should have always one parent. So either you can wrap it with div, okay, which is the usual case people always do, so that it is wrapped between this. It will now not give an error, but this will add unnecessary element in your DOM. Okay, and sometimes that will cause an issue. So instead of that, what you can use React dot fragment. Okay, so this will not add any extra element, and also it will not give you any error like, okay, you are passing two siblings instead of one parent. And the shortcut of this is just this. So if you just use this also works. Okay, and I always prefer using this. So yeah, you can choose whatever you like. So now let's say this is that case, right? Now let me remove it from here and put it over here, because if this is an uncontrolled input, then but I still want its like a value, right? So that's why I can put it over here. Okay, I'm not using my state to control its input. I'm just wanting to access its value, whatever the user types. So let's go. Okay, and okay, and I think I should put it over here. Input current. Whenever it's change, I want to print it. Okay. Okay, not sure what's the issue, but let's see. Okay, let's not do this. This is not working. Maybe we cannot pass. I think state and prop is also only things that are that you can pass over here, and maybe functions also. But yeah, I think ref is not working within the dependency array. So what we can do is we can have a click. Uh, Click. What we can do is console log dot value. See, we are getting the value. Okay, so this is a example of uncontrolled input, and also this is an example of how to you access the DOM nodes within your JSX using the refs. Okay, now this is a hook, and before hook there was something not create ref. Okay, so earlier that was there, but since we are using hooks now, so we can directly use the hook version of it. Okay, earlier there was a create ref thing. You can, if you want, you can read about that also. Yeah, but yeah, so let's go back to slide and see what else. So because this is a let me just go to, because this is a mutable object, you can even store a value to persist among renders. Okay, meaning let's say you want to store some value, let's say I mean use case exactly, let's see, but you want to store some value which would be persistent among renders. Okay, this might not change in the when the this component renders again, then you can make use of refs. That is also another use. Okay, because it's a mutable object. So these are the two use cases for it. Okay, for useRef. Yeah, otherwise everything, I hope it's clear. Let's see. Transpiler variable first render. Okay, I think I will have to. Okay, when it is a ref to an element which has not been mounted. I mean, because it is a DOM, you're asking a reference to the DOM element, right? So if it is not mounted, I don't think you can do that. Only once it is mounted, you can get reference to it. Changes in current doesn't cause render. You are right. Cool. So accessing the DOM, yeah, that's what I have been teaching currently. This is how you can do it. Here I have mentioned it itself. The update of dot current property does not cause the render. Okay, and also the value remains persistent till lifetime of the component. Okay, so that's why that dependency thing was not working. Okay, cool. Let's go to the next part, which is pure component. Any doubt in useRef? Do let me know. Meanwhile, I'll start. So pure component. So pure component in React has the same meaning what pure functions has in JavaScript. Okay. Thanks for the confirmation, Yashwant. Mrityunjay. Thanks. Cool. So basically, first of all, we need to understand what are pure functions. Okay. A function that returns the same value for the same arguments passed to it and does not cause any side effect like manipulating a variable outside of the function is known as a pure function. Okay, we'll have an example also. So let's say this is a function calculate. It takes two input a and b and returns the multiplication of it. This is a pure function because it totally depends on these two arguments. Doesn't matter how many times we call this function with the same arguments, it will return the same output. So that's why that's a pure function. Now what is that impure function? Meaning not a pure function. So here it's taking the same arguments, but its result is dependent upon another variable which is outside. If tomorrow I change the value of pi, okay, this output changes. Okay, hence the output is not just dependent on A and B, it's dependent on some external factor, and hence this is not a pure function. Okay, and there's one more not a pure function example of not a pure function. So I'll tell you. Let me take JS fill. Which I already mentioned in the definition, but let's. Okay, so here if I do let's say I just return a and to b. Okay, so till now nothing, this is a pure function. Okay, taking a plus b as parameter and returning a into b. But if I do this, okay, now is this a pure function or not? It is not. Why? Because even though the output is not changing, but I am doing a side effect, I am changing a value outside it. Okay, and hence this is also not a pure function. Okay, cool. So now that we have understood what are pure functions and what are not pure functions, let's go ahead. So in React, when a parent component is re-rendered due to any state change, prop update, anything, all of its children component are also re-rendered, even though they might not require re-rendering. Okay, that's how your algorithm is written for re-rendering purpose. So that's how it works. Let's say there is parent. So if parent has to be re-rendered, then child 1 and child 2 will also be re-rendered unnecessarily. Okay, so that's the behavior of your React. Okay, now React is fast enough to not let such unnecessary re-render cause any slowness in application. But sometimes when we are dealing with a render heavy child component, let's say it has some animation or it's doing a lot of API calls and stuff, okay, then it might take time to render, or it might do unnecessary API calls and like use our server bandwidth or something like that. Okay, so we can prevent unnecessary renders for that set of component by making them a pure component. Okay, so pure component implicitly implements the shouldComponentUpdate lifecycle method and does a shallow comparison of props. Now let's understand what this is. Okay, till here everything was understandable. I hope that why we need pure component. Okay, even if you have doubts, do let me know. Mm, this concept of mounting is relevant if we use. Yeah, mounting happens in your component. Doesn't matter if you use hooks or not. Mounting, unmounting, and updating. All of those phases will happen. Cool. Yeah, where was I? Yeah, correct. So pure component, I hope what pure component is understood. Okay, now the details about it, let's understand that. So as I said, it implicitly implements should component update. So let's understand what should component update is. Okay, React.js.org should component update. Cool, this is the method. It takes two params, one is next props and next state. Okay, so we can use this to let React know if a component's output is not affected by the current change in props. Okay, the default behavior is to re-render on every state changes. In the vast majority of cases, you should rely on the default behavior. Yeah, so you should not implicitly try to implement should component update. Okay, this method only exists for performance optimization. So as I told you, right, unnecessary re-renders. If there is a component which is like render heavy, okay, in that case you might want to use this, but that also do not use directly. Okay, consider using the built-in pure component instead of writing your own should component update by hand. Okay, pure component performs a shallow comparison of props and states and reduces the chance that you will skip a necessary update. Okay, so this is why you should use pure component, and it uses internally it will implement should component update. Now there is one more word that is there, shallow comparison. Okay, what does that shallow comparison mean? Shallow comparison means that your objects are not compared going inside. Okay, meaning okay, that was a very weird way of saying it, but I'll say that obj Let's say there are two objects. If I compare directly like this, okay, if I compare like this, then this is your shallow comparison. Okay, what will it give me? Can someone tell me what will it give me? And false, yes. Okay, it is an HTML. Wow, nice. It is doing false, correct? Why? Because it's comparing the references. We'll talk more about this references part because we'll be learning about use callback and those stuff. But this is what is known as shallow comparison. What will be deep comparison? Comparing, going inside the object and comparing each and every value. That would be a deep comparison. Okay, so this will work if you have your props as simple values, strings, numbers, booleans. All of that will work fine. But if your props are objects, then it might not work. Okay, so it will not work, not might. So basically that's what shallow comparison means. Okay, so now I hope it is understood. Pure component implicitly implements shouldComponentUpdate lifecycle method and does a shallow comparison of props. This is invoked before rendering when new props or state are being received. Okay, and it defaults to true. Defaults to true meaning should component it should update. By default it should update. As I told you, right? If your parent component is updating, your child will update. So it will default to true. Okay, and we can compare the current props with the previous prop and return false if they are same, and we don't want the component to re-render. Okay, now the pure component concept works only for class-based component. Okay, how can you do it? I have shown it over here. So usually if you want to create any class components, how we do? Class, the component name extends React.component. That's how normal class components are there. But if you want your component to be pure component, then only thing you have to change is React.pureComponent. Instead of React.component, it will be React.pureComponent. Okay, so if you do this, your component becomes your pure component, and it will prevent unnecessary re-renders. Okay, now any doubt in pure components? Okay, cool. So let's understand how can we make the functional component as pure component. Okay, Ishant, I'll be explaining that in detail. Don't worry why it was false. Okay, going forward, because we will be requiring that knowledge. So and also if you want even more depth explanation, then you should attend my JavaScript sessions, okay, on Saturdays. But yeah, so let's continue. Yeah. So that was for class-based components. What about functional components? If you want to make them also not re-render unnecessarily, what should we do? So for that we have something which is known as React.memo. Okay, now React.memo is a higher order component. Now you might be thinking, what does higher order component mean? So if you know JavaScript, then you would know there is something which is known as higher order function. Okay, so in JavaScript, a higher order function is a function which takes another function as an argument and or returns a function. Okay, which I already taught multiple times if you have attended my JavaScript sessions. So similarly, in React, a higher order component takes a component as an argument. Okay, modifies its logic a bit. Okay, maybe it changes, it adds something to it, and then returns the component. Okay, and this React.memo is such a higher order component. It will take a functional non-memoized component and it will return a memoized functional component. Now what does memoize mean? Memoize mean cached. If you can directly, if you want a very layman term, you can say cached. Okay, again I talk in detail about memoization in my JavaScript session, so you can watch that same YouTube channel, different series. Okay, yeah, so that's about React.memo. Okay, now since this also does shallow compares, we can optionally add a custom comparison as the second argument. Okay, again, like just like pure component did shallow comparison with using the shouldComponentUpdate, this React.memo also does shallow comparison, but in this case you can pass your own function, okay, which will do comparison as you want. Okay, for as the second argument. So let's see what I'm talking about. So let's say this is your component. Okay, my component, normal functional component. Then there is this function r equal, okay, which will accept previous props and next props. Returns true if next props, if passing, sorry, returns true if passing next prop to the render would return the same result as the previous, okay, otherwise return false. Okay, so here this is my React.memo component. This will return the memoized version of my current component, and optionally I can pass another function which will actually do the comparison, which will have the access to previous props and next props. Okay, so is this clear? React.memo? Any doubt in React.memo? Yeah, Yashwant, what's the doubt? Okay, maybe you said is it, maybe you answered to, oh, is it clear? Okay, got it. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. So correct variation. Yeah. Awesome. So let's continue and let's now go to the very important part to understand. How does React compare props, which are functions and objects? Now, as we discussed, okay, that functions and objects, okay, many objects basically in JavaScript are compared by references and not by values. Okay, so okay, let me just check if I have explained this over here, or do I need to explain it separately? Okay, I have to explain it separately. Great. And let's go. Yeah. So Ishant, I think this will answer your questions. Okay. So whenever you're trying to compare two objects, okay, it is meaning you are comparing the reference, meaning whenever this object will be created, it will have a memory allocation in the memory. Okay, so that memory address will be stored in the obj1, okay, internally. And similarly, when you create another object, this will be allocated at different memory location. Okay, so doesn't matter what the contents of the objects are, both of them will occupy different memory allocation, and because it uses different memory allocation, it will have different address, and internally this address will be different for obj2, and hence even though the contents of these objects are same, okay, their references will be different because their addresses are different, and that's why you cannot compare objects directly with using the strict equality operator. I hope that is clear, because internally it will just compare your addresses. And same goes for anything that is object in JavaScript. So in JavaScript, everything is basically objects. So your functions are objects, your arrays are objects, and even for all primitive types, there are objects. Like there is a string, number, boolean. All of object versions are also there in JavaScript. Okay, so but your primitive types will still be compared valid in a valid way for using strict equality, but for your functions, for your objects, for your arrays, it will not be a valid comparison. I hope that. Is yeah, got so cool, clear, awesome. Let's continue. I think this is going to be very short session. See, we are on 69 slide and 72 done. That's it. Okay, I have to get more content for my next session. We'll talk about that later. Cool. React compares functions and objects by references. Yep, that's what I just explained. Not just that. Okay, used effect dependency, okay, are also compared by object.is. Okay, so now you might be wondering what is object.is. So you can read about it in mdn.io. So instead of using triple equality, it uses object.is. It's very similar. It's just that that plus 0 negative 0 wala thing is there. So but otherwise it's very similar. Okay, so this method determines whether two values are the same value. Okay, so you can even see like what does same value mean. So yeah, you can go in depth of it, but yeah, see how does it determine, like both are undefined, then same, both are null, then same, if both are true or false, then same, both strings of same length with same characters in same order, then same. Okay, both same object, meaning both values references the same object. Okay, this is what I was talking about. How will it become same? If I'll show you with the example. So if I do equals to, if I do this now and I compare object 3 with object 1. Okay, then it is true. Why? Because I just added one more reference, object 3, to point to the same memory allocation. Okay, same memory, I just added one more reference, meaning it will have the same address, and hence this works. Okay, so that's what they are talking about in this, meaning both values reference the same object in memory. Okay, so yeah, both numbers and both plus 0 negative 0, or both no 0 and both are not NAND. So these are the conditions of how your object dot is works. Okay, so yeah, very similar to triple equality, just one small difference. Okay, if you want to learn about the difference, then this is the difference. Okay, cool. Now coming back to our slides. So yeah, not just that, use effect dependencies, so in the dependency area that we have, are also compared by object.is, which compares objects and functions with references again. So when a compare component is re-rendered, entire function of the component is executed, and at that time new reference of your objects and functions are created, even though the actual content of the object and functions has not changed. Okay, let's see this in action so that you will be able to understand better. Mm, mm. Okay, I'll have to create a new file. Memoization. Common memoization. Okay. Cool. So here what I'll do, I'll just create a component. Okay. How will I? What should I do to use that example to memoize this one? Let's create another one. So this is the parent component which will actually use this memoized component. Okay. So let's for the sake of it, I'll do this count, and let's say const name set by capital N is not equal. So accepts two things, one is count and one is name. Let's say just take names, not count. Okay. So I should export this one instead of that one. Parent component. And this should be at the end. Okay, cool. Okay, so let me explain what I did here. And just take this. Okay. So we have a parent component, okay, in which we have two state. One is count, one is name. Okay. And what we have a for JSX we are running is one is h1 tag, and then we are using another component where we are passing the name as a prop. Okay, and this is using the name prop, restructuring it and then showing it. Okay, and then there is a button which will increment the counter. Okay, So this is the simple component. Now whenever I increment the counter, okay, the parent component will get updated, okay, and with that this will also get updated. Why? Because that's how React works. Even though that count, the only thing that it is accepting as prop name is not changed, but still this will be re-rendered, okay. And we can check how we can see if it's re-rendered or not. We can do a console log over here, console.log parent component rendered, and we can call here, we can have child component rendered. Okay, let's see this. So first of all I have to go again to here and I have to go. Okay, so this is our component. Let's refresh. Okay, so parent component rendered, child component rendered. For sure at mount place it did rendered. Now if I increase the count, okay, I'm not showing the count, but it increased. So if you see parent component rendered, child component also rendered. So parent component was supposed to render because its own state changed, but child component also rendered. Why? Because the parent component rendered, not because its own prop changed. Okay, so now if I don't want this behavior to happen, let's say our component is too heavy, render heavy, and I don't want that to happen, or what I can do is I can uh, mm, export, or here I can component equals to React.memo and component done. This is it. No issues. Now this will become memoized. Okay, hopefully. Let's see. Refresh. Parent rendered, child rendered. Only parent rendered. Child did not render. Why? Because I made it memoized using the React.memo. Okay. So I hope this basic behavior is clear. Okay, and it just checked that the name prop, whether it was changed or not, whether it was same. So it was same toning, and hence it did not re-render it. So I hope this is clear. Okay, now let's go and try to do different example. Okay, let me see if I have put it in slide or nope. I need to update the slides. Great. Let's take example. Actually, it's an object. So name, I'll get it from the name. So that's fine. Okay, that's fine. And skills, next revision. Not sure about that, but fine. Team. Let's say I have an object of hero. Okay, and also correct, like this. I'll update it. So this is a function, this is my object, and now I'm passing them, okay, over here. So hero equals to hero and update hero equals update hero. Let's change this hero. Now here I can do stringify. Since it's an object, I have to stringify it, otherwise it won't allow me to render it. And update hero, we can yeah, we are not going to use it, but let's assume that this might use it. Okay, so now that what I change is that instead of just having name, we have a hero object and we have an update hero function. Okay, again this component is not taking the count. Okay, so and we have memoized our component, so it should not re-render when I increment count in parent. Okay, technically. Okay, so let's go back and let's see, refresh, click, the child is re-rendered. Why? Because of what I just mentioned earlier, that the objects are compared via reference, and even this function is compared via reference. Okay, now let's even go and understand in depth how this works. So when parent component re-renders, that will re-render because I update the state, I updated the count, so that will re-render. So this function will execute again, this function will execute again, it will again go line by line, it will again create this object new memory location, and that new memory address will be stored into hero. Okay, similarly it will create this new function definition, that new address will be stored and in the update hero. Okay, and hence since these are new memory addresses and the previous memory addresses are different, so that will be matched. Okay, that will be matched, but as both are different, then this component will think, okay, I have to re-render. Why? Because the previous address and new address are different. Okay, and hence I have to re-render. This is very very important to understand, to help you understand what is React, useMemo and useCallback. Okay, and those are very important hooks that are supposed to be used in your production grade code, and obviously not overuse, but definitely you have to use it where it's required. So is this part clear? Why is a memoized component getting re-rendered which has an object and a function in their props? What's the difference between double equals or triple equals to? Okay, that we can, I'll take it in JavaScript session, so that is fine. Isn't there is array for comparing arrays to? Yeah, there is this array. It's not for comparing arrays. It's to find whether something is an array or not. Where about content? No, see, so again same thing, that comparing two objects is same as comparing two arrays, because arrays are eventually objects. Okay, so and I will be teaching the deep comparison of objects in my JavaScript session, so you can join there. Cool. Or you can use library for sure. Is this GitHub pile? Yes. Okay, fine, cool. Any doubt till now? Anything? Nope. Okay, thanks for confirmation. Okay, if JavaScript regarding doubts, come to JavaScript sessions. Okay, I'll definitely clear it out. And if you attend, you will not have doubts at all. Don't worry. And actually, talking about the difference between double equal to triple equal to, that's actually not what everyone thinks it is. What Yashwant has mentioned, there is a common understanding, but that's not completely accurate. It depends on the coercion part. So basically, your double equals to does the coercion and compares it, and triple equals to doesn't allow coercion. So that's the thing. Okay, yeah. So, but yeah, to briefly understand, that's what he has written is correct. But to understand it correctly, so that's why I don't want to mention all of this in React sessions. Yeah. Cool. Let's go ahead. Cool. So this is a function, this is an object, and the comparison didn't work. So how do we now do it. So for this comes in picture two hooks by created by React, built-in hooks. Okay, so one is useMemo. useMemo is used to memoize your values. Okay, and also any computationally expensive functions, okay, which return a value, those also can be memoized using useMemo. And to memoize our functions, there is use callback. Okay, so let's see that. Okay, so this is a object. So what I'll do is I'll memoize it. Use memo. Okay, so it takes a callback which returns a function. Okay, so it takes a callback which returns a function. This is a callback which returns a, so callback which returns a function. So basically I have to repeat so the call uses then only to work. Fine, and it takes a dependency. So dependency on our function is just name, because name is a state that might change. So that's our only dependency. If name changes, then only return new instance of hero, otherwise don't return new instance of hero. Okay, so now let's first test that out. Okay, without this, let's test that out. Okay, so let's go back to our refresh. Click me. Okay, only parent updated, the child did not update. Why? Because we memoized the value. Okay, this is might be a little difficult to understand for if you are coming across this hook for the first time. I'll explain it again, don't worry. So this is a hook. Okay, hooks are nothing but functions that accepts two arguments. One is a callback, so this is your callback, and second is the dependency array. Okay, so let's talk about callback. So callback should be something, okay, that returns a value, because this thing memo is a value. Okay, so that returns a value. Okay, so what is our value? Our value is an object, and the second argument is the dependency array, meaning when should we return a new instance of this value. Okay, when should we create a new instance in the memory, that is depends on this array. Okay, so if name changes, because everything else is constant, see the skills are constant, this team is, we are giving hard coding it, only name is changing. Okay, so if name changes, then return a new instance of hero, otherwise return the same instance of it. Okay, I hope that is clear. Any doubt in use memo? No doubt. Okay, thanks for the confirmation. Is it clear, everyone? So if you have doubt, do ask me, because it was like most of the session is done. Like I have only just one more thing, use callback to be explained, but I'll explain a couple of more things which are still not there in slides. But yeah, I guess I don't see any doubts coming in, so I hope that is clear. Okay, now let's talk about this function. How do I memorize that? So to memorize this function, what you have to do is use react.useCallback. So react.useCallback. Again, it takes a callback which returns a function. Okay, so, and a dependency. So in this case, the dependency is our hero. Okay, even name is a dependency. Let's add that also. But it's giving an error. Let me see what's the issue. Okay, so maybe see, since here okay, why name is not a dependency and hero is a dependency? Interesting. Okay, what if I did unmemoized it? See, now it's giving error. So here to fix this wrap initialization of hero with its own use memo. So that I did. Let me do Control Z. Okay, because this is memoized now. Okay, this is because now this is memoized and it is depending on name, and hence name I'm not requiring to pass over here. Okay, because of that reason I'm not required to pass name over here. I hope that is clear. Okay, so again I'll explain what is use callback. Use callback takes two arguments again. So use effect, use memo, use callback all takes two arguments. First is the callback, second is the dependency array. That is always clear. Okay, now coming specifically to use callback, the first callback will return a function. Okay, the first callback returns a function that is supposed to be memoized, and the in the dependency array you have to pass on what that function is dependent. So what changes, so that there is should be a new instance of that function. Okay, so now let's pass that over here. Update hero equals to update hero. Okay, let's see if it works. Click me. Only parent re-rendered, child did not re-render. Why? Because we passed a memoized version of the function. Okay, and hence new instance was not created. The same old memory references was there, so same old memory reference compared, both are same, so memoization worked. Awesome. Any doubt in React your use memo and React.use callback? What if everything is constant inside object but we want to pass in child component? Yes, yes, if everything was constant in their object it will be an empty array dependency. Correct. Cool. Any doubts? Thanks for the confirmation, Yashwant. No doubts. Let's go to the slides. Let's see what I have written actually. Mm, hmm. Same thing what I have been teaching. So use callback takes two arguments, the function to be memoized, dependency array based on which you decide whether to return on same or the new reference. Returns the memoized function whose reference will only change if any dependency has changed. This is how you write it. Awesome. useMemo takes two arguments, a function which returns a value to be memoized and a dependency array based on which it decides to return the same or the new reference the value. Okay. Yeah, useMemo is also used to memorize computationally expensive values. Okay, so if there is a function, okay, which is a very it takes like a couple of seconds, like 1 or 2 seconds to calculate something, then also you can memorize that using useMemo. Okay, again I have taught memoization especially in my JavaScript previous session, just yesterday session, so you can refer that if you want to deeply understand how memoization actually works. Cool, this is the example for it. Then again I have given example for a computationally expensive. So let's say this is a function which is computationally expensive, then this is how I will memorize it. Simple. You pass the callback which actually calls the function which is supposed to return the value. Okay, and you pass the dependencies. So this is a function which is a computationally expensive. This output of this will only change when a or b has changed. Okay, so you pass both of them as a dependency and you call this function. Now there is one caveat. Okay, so one weird behavior with this. So it will memorize only the previous value, meaning let's say currently you passed in this case 1 and 2. Okay, next time also you pass 1 and 2, so it will be coming from the cache. Now you pass 3 and 4, so again newly value will be completed. But again now you passed 1 and 2, then it will again be computed. Why? Because internally they keep the stack to be only keeping the last value. Okay, because otherwise if we keep memoizing, our stack will overflow with the old values, our cache will overflow with the old values. Okay, and hence it keeps the cache of only the previous render. So I'll explain that again. So here let's take example of this. So for name Tony, it is rendered. Okay, it is cached. Fine. Okay. Now if I change Tony to Steve, okay, new instance will be created because that name has changed. And now if I again try change it back to Tony, it will come from the cache. That is fine. Okay. But again, if I change it to Hulk and then come back and then change, then it will not have that value. So it will only have the previous value. Okay. Mm, did I say it correctly? Okay, maybe I did something wrong with it. Okay, good. Let me clear it out. So let's say this is Tony. When I render it again, and if it is Tony, it will be coming from the cache and it will not be computed. Till now, it's I hope it's clear. But now, if I change it to Steve, that is going to get computed, and this Steve will now be stored into cache, and that will be overridden. Like Tony will be now removed, and Steve will be the new value in the cache. Okay. So now if I again go and do Tony, at that time it will again calculate. Again this time it will calculate and again it will override the previous Steve. So in cache only the last rendered value is there. Okay. So that's little caveat when you are using useMemo and useCallback for both of them. Otherwise, in general, memoization works in a way that your values are cached in for a longer time. Okay. But in case of this React thing, it's like that. Yes, only one previous state is stored. Correct. Okay. Thanks for joining Coding After 20s. What are the next session topic? I'll talk about this. Using use callback, how to debug area component. See, you don't need to use callback to detect that. You will know if see this case only happens if your use effect has an empty, like it doesn't have any dependency at all. Okay, so if you do something like use dot use effect, then some callback, and you don't pass any dependency. If you don't pass any dependency, like there is no dependency, then this will go into infinite loop. Okay, but otherwise the and use callback is not required to detect that, as far as I know. You have to go into your log and you have to check how it works. Okay, cool. So now that this is out of the picture, let's understand what else is there. Great. So this is over. Awesome. We finished it in 1 hour itself. Nice. So what will I be teaching next? So then there is a project that I'll be doing. So project, but I want to start in the next session itself. It will be a small project, but very intermediate level coding will be done in that you can use in your own company project also. That is there. And apart from that, we can talk about suspense, we can talk about code splitting using react.lazy. We can talk about error boundaries. That's what we can talk about. But these and all will make sense only when I'm doing the project. Okay. um, Otherwise I can show how it is actually being used, the actual value of it. So those are some of the things that we can that I'll be teaching in the coming sessions. Anything else that I can teach in this session? Okay, so let me anyways take a break. I always take a break after 1 hour of the session. It's already 1 hour 8 minutes. So let me take a break. Okay, if I can think of some topic that I want to teach today, I'll teach, or we'll do Q&A and we'll wrap it up. Meanwhile, if you have any topic of React that you want me to teach, you can put it in the chat. If I can, I'll teach today, or I can take it up later. Yeah, so I'll be back in a short break, after a short break. Okay. Okay, I'm back. So, so I'm just reading the chats. Exporting works in like default. That is again something related to JavaScript. You can maybe attend my JavaScript session. In that, I'll be talking about it. Routing and conditional routing can be a good topic. Okay, so I am planning to teach React Router V6. So at that time, I'll take that topic. Nothing different. Yeah, correct. It's about working in complex forms, custom hooks. Custom hooks. Okay, so custom hook is what I was thinking actually to do today. So let's do that. Complex forms need a particular use case for it. I need to actually build a good exercise for it. So I might think on that. Um, Really, forms and tables are something that is actually what we do like 60 or 70% of the time. So that plan to take as a separate tutorial itself. So we'll do that at that time. Webpack setup, again a good topic. I already did a custom configured uh, React app. It's already there in my GitHub. I will put it in the description also. I have put it, I think first session also I have put it in the first or last session, but I'll put it again. You can refer that. But if you want, I can teach that also. So let me keep that in my mind. Custom configuration of your React app. That would be a good thing to do. Yeah. Creating a React app along with H hot module reloading without CRA. CRA. Yes, yes, yes. So I think yeah, both of you are pointing to the same thing. Let me target that for the next session hopefully. But one thing, that next session might not happen next weekend. I might take 1 weekend gap, but I'll inform accordingly. mm, Anyways, you guys will be there in my Discord and LinkedIn, so I'll update it. So for today, what I can see is I can take a custom hook. I can teach you a very good custom hook which you can use anywhere, and whenever someone asks you to build a custom hook in an interview, you can use the same one. Okay, cool. So let's do that. Okay. I'll update this. So I already shared the repo for last session. I'll update the same repo so you can access these files. Mm, okay, should be the one file actually. Mm, okay. So we are going to implement a custom hook which will fetch your data from an API. Okay. Here you will be learning about useEffect. You'll be learning about useCallback. You'll be learning how to fetch data in a graceful manner. Okay. Now this is a like normal way of fetching data. Uh, Even better way of fetching data, I'll show you when we'll be doing the project. Okay. But yeah, this should be good enough also. So let's say let's have to import React from React. Okay, done. Okay, now our hook. So const use fetch, because it's a custom hook, you will start it with use, and we are fetching data, so I will name it fetch, and it will take one argument which is our URL from which you want to fetch. Okay, so this is our function. Now we will need some states to manage this hook, right? So yeah, I will need participation from you guys. What state should I add over here? I'll just write the skeleton. You guys tell me in the chat what state should I add over here. Fetching time. Nope. What else? What else? So one will be the data that I'm going to get, which will initially I'll say let's say initialize it. Uh, yeah, let's leave it. It will be undefined. Second will be loading. Yeah, correct. Loading by default false, and third will be error in case there is an error. Even let me do this. It's null. Fine. Cool. This is enough, right? But again, this loading and error, these two states, we can do better handling of this using reducer. But again, that I'll be teaching in when I'll do the project. Okay. So, but for now, this is also good enough. So these are the states. Now we have to do actual fetching. So let me create a function fetch data. Here we will use I will use Axios, but you can use fetch, but I prefer Axios. So, so Axios is a library to do API calls and get data. Okay. So clear yarn add Axios. Yeah, you can use suspense and stuff. Suspense also planning to teach. Anyways, I'll be teaching React.lazy, so suspense will be there. But I just want to check whether in current React 18 is there anything changed of what I know about suspense, because suspense was an experimental thing, and now how much of it is changed I need to confirm before I teach it. Import Axios from Axios. Now let's do Axios dot get, because it's a get call, whatever URL is, and then dot then. So it will be returning a promise. So in that promise, first of all, I'll get the data. If I'm getting the data, I will set the data. But before that, I need to do one thing, right? I need to set loading equals to true, because as soon as this function start executing, I am loading the data. And once I get the data, I have to set loading to false, because I have got the data. And so data fine, that is done. Now dot catch in case there is an error, right? So in that case we'll catch the error. Again, first of all, set loading to false and set error to whatever error we are getting. Fine, this is cool. Now let's go and now when does this call should happen? When should this call happen? When the component is mounted, right? So what call we can do? We can do useFetch, and we'll pass this callback. And what is it dependent on? It's dependent on URL, but this function itself is something that should be there in the dependency, right? But if I put it in the dependency, it will be created again and again. So what should I use over here? How can I make this better? How can I optimize this fetch data function? Store in current. Okay, anything else? We just learned about it. This fetch data is something that I'm passing in the use effect. Okay, and once it changes, I need to call it again. So, but it is a function, so it will always be creating a new instance. Callback, use callback, correct. I put it in use callback. React.use callback. Fine. Now what is this dependent on? It's dependent on URL. Okay, because that's the only thing that is dependent on. And now fetch data will be dependent on fetch data. I mean useEffect will be dependent on fetch data array. So let me explain this again if you are not able to understand that this fetch data function is dependent on URL change. If URL change, then only have to create a new instance of it. Okay, and useEffect, meaning when should I call this function again? When URL changes, but when URL changes, this will change, and hence when this changes, when this function itself changes, at that time only I have to call this. Okay, so all the dependency I hope are clear. Okay, if it's not clear, go back and understand what is use callback in the same session. Just like scrub your um, YouTube thing and go back and just understand what was use callback, and then you'll be able to understand maybe. Okay, cool. So this is done. Now once we have the data, so this is our functionality. Now what this should return? What will it should return? It will return an I'll give this. It will return an array. What will that array contain? URL. Nope. Data error and loading. Correct. And let me export this. Great, done. Our hook is ready. Let's go and use it. Same component actually. I'll have to create a new component. Folder नहीं component. Okay. RAFCE users fine, awesome. And what I need the import useFetch. Also, one thing about hooks that you should remember is that awesome this GitHub is awesome. Is that your hooks are always in the top of the function. Okay, your hook should always be in the top of the function. Don't do anything else, any other functions and all everything else, and then at the end put your hooks below it. Okay, and also don't put your hooks in any loops or if condition or anything like that. Yeah, otherwise there will be an issue with its closure. So there's a like, if I want to explain that, will be bit deep, but always put your hooks at the top level in the function. Like it goes with all hooks, use state, use effect, everything. Cool, this is what I wanted to write. Use fetch hook, this is the URL. Okay, this is a example API which is available for everyone to use. Okay, so as useFetch accepts a URL, I'm passing that URL. What it returns a array. So again, this should not be an object, it should be an array. Similar to how your use state will be returning an array, this is returning an array, and we have data loading and error in that. Okay, now how do we make use of this? Okay, now how to handle data fetching of data gracefully? So first of all, we check for loading. So if it is loading, again conditional rendering, this is returning loading. Awesome. Here you can use skeleton, you can do it better. Okay, and now if error, so if there is an error, what to do? Return error, and you can even again you can handle this better, but for now I'll just stringify what error object I'm getting. Okay, and otherwise we will return the actual URL UI that you want. So let's have which one. So let's see what actually this returns. So based on that, I can display the UI. Okay, returns ID, that could be the key prop, name and email. So let's say let's just use name. Okay, for now, for our purpose. Mm. So data is an, it will be an array of objects. Okay, so let's just do data. First check whether data is not null or undefined, then check if it is, length is not equals to 0, and then only go and map it over. Yes, data dot map user. Okay, I'll just have a p tag, just display the name and it will be user. Now I have access to each of them, so user dot name, and in this key equals to user dot id. Cool, let's see if how this works. Command P, let's go, let's import users, right? Let's go. We have an error. Why not? The dot map is not a function. Okay, maybe it's not returning. Map is not a function. Okay, for now let's comment this. We'll see what's the issue and we can change it accordingly. But I know for sure this will be an object, so we'll just render it as JSON stringify data. Okay, so it has is an object which has data. Okay. So data dot actually I can destructure it so that I don't have to do it. So will this work? No. Okay. It's fine. So if you see in a fraction of a second, you can see loading and then you see the users, right? I can show that using network throttling 2G network. Refresh. Again, it was still fast. Wow, good, 2G is fast. 3G. Still fast, but yeah, I hope you are able to see, get the data. Okay. This is how you should write your custom hook. Okay, and this is a very good hook that you can use anywhere to fetch data if it's just a get call. Okay, if it's a post call, you have to customize it in a different way, but if it's a get call, you can use this. So yeah, this is a hook. It returns data loading error. Based on that, you can do different things. You can even say customize an error. Let's see if I do this. Error loading. No throttling. Why is it coming like error then? Whatever error I'm getting in process correct. Maybe this is not returning us our error properly, but otherwise it will be working as expected. And yeah, this is the code, and that is your custom hook. Any doubts in this? If I create object outside a function component and use it, no, it will not be re-rendered or recreated. Yeah, I can use that. Actually, I should have tried that optional chaining. Okay, but again, I have to change the URL because I purposely. Yeah, so that was the thing, optional chaining. Got it. Thanks, Yashut. So this is our data. Any doubts? Any doubts? Any doubts? Any doubts? Thanks for the clarification. Thanks, Yashwant. So yeah, I think this is it for today's session. If you have any doubts, I'll be still sticking around for a couple of minutes. But in next sessions, we'll be learning a lot of. I'm even confused. Like, should I take the project in next session and then teach a couple of things, or I'll plan it out. I'll plan it out and let you know. But definitely there will be a next session. For sure, there will be a couple of more sessions. Welcome, Mrityunjay. If you guys are liking this content, if you think this is some different content this that is not already there on YouTube, then please feel free to share among your other colleagues and on your socials if you feel like. Um, because I'm really trying to create some content which is not already there and it's actually of importance. So this will not only just help you clear interviews for sure. If you just go to these three sessions, no, you will be able to clear any interview, any level. But it will also help you in your day-to-day coding lives. Okay. Mm, mm, mm. Okay, I don't see any doubts. I'll just wait one more minute, then we can uh, pack it up. Cool. I don't see any doubts. So thanks a lot, guys, for joining in. I really, really appreciate it. Whoever joins my live sessions. Um, I'll see you in the next session. And if you're in my DSA sessions, if you're joining DSA sessions, then I'll see you tomorrow night. Okay. Chalo. Bye bye. Thanks for joining.